Imagine being kicked out of your home, having your father legally remove himself from your life entirely, and then discovering that he's still holding on to your passport and refusing to give it back. Not only that, but he's a law enforcement officer. Someone who is supposed to know the law better than almost anyone. Someone who swore an oath to uphold it. And yet, here he is, potentially breaking it. That is exactly the situation one young person in Washington state found themselves in. And what happened next is a masterclass in knowing your rights. Let's set the scene. We're in King County, Washington. For those who don't know, King County is the most populous county in the state. It's where Seattle is located, and it has one of the larger sheriff's offices in the Pacific Northwest. Now, one of the deputies working for that office had a child living with him, but things at home had deteriorated to the point where the father made the decision to kick his own child out of the house. Not just informally, not just a heated argument followed by someone storming out. He actually had it put in writing and forwarded to the court that he was relinquishing his parental rights. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't ambiguous. This was a deliberate, documented, court-acknowledged legal action. The father voluntarily chose to sever his legal relationship with his own child. Now, why does that matter so much? Because parental rights in the United States aren't just an emotional concept. They are a legal framework. They define who has authority over a minor child, who is responsible for that child's well-being, who can make decisions on their behalf, and critically, who has legal custody or control over that child's documents and property. When you relinquish parental rights, and that relinquishment is acknowledged by a court, you are stepping out of that framework entirely. You are saying, under the law, I am no longer this person's parent. And with that declaration comes the immediate loss of any legal authority you once had over that child or their belongings. So where does the passport come in? The young person in this situation needed their passport back. Maybe for travel, maybe for identification purposes. A passport is one of the most powerful pieces of identification a person can carry. It proves citizenship, it proves identity, and without it, there are things you simply cannot do. And the father, despite having legally removed himself from the picture entirely, was refusing to hand it over. He was still calling, still inserting himself into situations he had no legal standing to be involved in, and still holding on to a document that was not his to keep. This wasn't just frustrating. Under Washington state law, and frankly under federal law, this behavior crosses some very serious legal lines. Let's walk through what was actually happening here from a legal standpoint, because there are multiple layers to this story, and each one is more striking than the last. First, let's talk about the passport itself. A United States passport belongs to the United States government. That's actually printed right inside the document. The government issues it to the bearer for their use. A parent does not own their child's passport. Even when a parent has full, intact parental rights, they are essentially a custodian of that document for a minor child, not the owner. Once a child reaches a certain level of independence, or once parental rights are severed, there is absolutely no legal basis for a parent to retain that document. Holding on to someone's passport and refusing to return it is not a gray area. It can constitute a form of document theft or unlawful retention of property. In some contexts, particularly when it's used to control or coerce someone, it can even be considered a form of coercive control, which Washington state takes very seriously. Second, let's talk about Washington state law specifically. Washington has statutes that deal with the unlawful retention of identification documents. Withholding someone's passport, driver's license, or other government-issued ID as a means of control is something that shows up in trafficking laws, in domestic abuse statutes, and in general theft and property laws. The young person in this story had a legitimate legal claim to get that passport back. This wasn't a matter of asking nicely. This was a matter of the law being firmly on their side. Third, and this is the part that really elevates the stakes, the father was a law enforcement officer. Now, why does that matter legally? It matters because law enforcement officers are held to a higher standard of conduct, both on and off duty. Most sheriff's offices, including King County, have conduct policies that govern how their deputies behave, even in their personal lives. An officer who is engaged in what could be characterized as theft, coercion, or harassment doesn't just face potential criminal liability, they face potential professional consequences. We're talking about internal affairs complaints. We're talking about potential violations of their oath of office. We're talking about behavior that, if proven, could jeopardize their career, their badge, and their standing in the community. There's also something deeply ironic and troubling about a law enforcement officer using his position, even implicitly, to intimidate a young person into not pursuing their legal rights. Did he explicitly threaten them? We don't know. But the mere fact that your estranged father is a sheriff's deputy and is hounding you and refusing to give back your property creates an inherently unbalanced power dynamic. That's not lost on courts, and it's not lost on law enforcement oversight bodies either. So what were this young person's options? What could they actually do? The most immediate step was to send a formal written demand for the passport. This doesn't require a lawyer, though having one helps. A simple written letter sent via certified mail with return receipt stating clearly, "This passport belongs to me. You have no legal right to retain it. I am demanding its return within a specific number of days, and failure to comply will result in legal action." That letter does two things. It gives the father one last opportunity to do the right thing, and it creates a paper trail that can be used in any subsequent legal proceeding. If that demand went ignored, the next step would be to file a police report for theft or unlawful retention of property. Now, here's where it gets interesting when the person withholding the document is himself a law enforcement officer. Filing a report with the same agency he works for might feel uncomfortable or even dangerous. In that case, there are options. The young person could go to a different jurisdiction, file with local city police rather than the county sheriff. They could contact the Washington State Patrol. They could reach out to the King County Sheriff's Office's own internal affairs or professional standards division and file a complaint against the officer directly. They could also contact the Washington State Attorney General's office if they felt that the officer's position was being used to intimidate or obstruct. Beyond the criminal avenue, there's a civil remedy as well. Small claims court in Washington State allows individuals to pursue the return of property or damages without needing to hire an attorney. For a passport specifically, you might also be able to go through federal channels, contacting the U.S. Department of State, which issues passports, and explaining that a third party is unlawfully retaining your travel document. The State Department takes passport issues seriously. And let's not forget, if the young person was a minor at the time of these events, a guardian ad litem or a court-appointed advocate could be involved. The fact that the father relinquished his parental rights, and this was documented in court proceedings, means there was already a legal case open. That court could be petitioned directly to order the return of the passport. The broader lesson here is one that comes up again and again in legal stories like this one. Having documentation changes everything. The fact that this father put his relinquishment of parental rights in writing and had it forwarded to the court was perhaps unintentionally a gift to his child. Because when the child needed to argue that this man had no legal authority over them or their property, the proof was already there. It was already in the court record. There was no he said, she said. There was no ambiguity. There was a documented, court-acknowledged legal reality. If you take nothing else from this story, take this. Document everything. Every interaction, every refusal, every demand, every communication. Write it down, screenshot it, save it, date it. Because when you walk into a lawyer's office or a courtroom or a police station, the person with the paper trail is the person with the power. Rights that you can prove are infinitely more useful than rights you can only describe. And if you are in a situation where someone, parent, landlord, employer, anyone, is withholding documents that belong to you, understand that the law in most states, and certainly at the federal level for passports, is clear. Those documents are yours. No one has the right to hold them over you. No one has the right to use them as leverage. And when the person doing it is supposed to be a guardian of the law themselves, The system has mechanisms to hold them accountable. You just have to be willing to use them. If this happened to you, if someone is withholding your identification documents, your passport, or using legal paperwork as a form of control, please consult with an attorney in your state as soon as possible. Many offer free consultations, and legal aid organizations exist in every state specifically to help people who cannot afford private representation. You have rights, you have remedies, and you do not have to navigate this alone. If you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. New videos go up every week covering real legal situations, real rights, and real answers. We'll see you in the next one.